Under a microscope, the ink on this 150-year-old letter has split into a web of hairline cracks. Real ink from the 1830s doesn't do that. This ink was less than a year old. The man who wrote it fooled handwriting experts, paper analysts, and some of the best archivists alive. His name was Mark Hofmann, and for 5 years he quietly rewrote history for money. Every document he ever made carried that same flaw. For years, nobody thought to look. This is how two men finally saw it, and what it cost before they did. Salt Lake City, the late 70s. Hofmann is a student with a side interest in old paper. He collects coins and documents obsessively, and keeps his private doubts about his childhood faith to himself. In 1980, he says he found something folded inside a 17th-century Bible he bought. A slip of paper covered in strange characters, the ones Joseph Smith said he copied from gold plates. For the Latter-day Saint Church, that slip sat somewhere between historical document and relic. Experts examined it. The paper was right, the ink was right. The handwriting matched. The church acquired it. Hofmann, 26, had just built something no specialist could break. Most fakes die on materials, modern paper, modern ink, a watermark from the wrong decade. Hofmann bought cheap old books nobody wanted and cut the blank pages out of the back. That gave him paper of the right age, made the right way, from the right rag fibers. For ink, he mixed iron gall by hand, crushed oak galls, iron sulfate, a little gum. But fresh iron gall ink sits on a page looking exactly like what it's new. Ink that's actually old has faded toward brown and bitten down into the paper's fibers. He couldn't wait 150 years, so he took a chemical shortcut. He treated the finished writing with an alkaline solution that aged the ink overnight. Then he aged the paper too, until it looked and smelled like something pulled from a trunk. That handled the chemistry. The handwriting is where he beat the people. Handwriting comparison only works if you have genuine samples to compare against. So Hofmann chose to forge people whose handwriting almost nobody had ever seen. Not famous signatures with 1,000 known examples. Obscure figures with 2 or 3 surviving scraps. He'd find those scraps in an archive, study them for weeks, and invent the rest. When an expert compared his letter against the known samples, it matched. Naturally it matched. He had copied, stroke for stroke, the only evidence that expert was allowed to use. And he didn't trace. Traced writing shakes, and the pen stops where a real hand wouldn't. He practiced until the forged hand moved like his own, fast, fluent, no hesitation anywhere. Every test they had, he'd already run against himself before they ever saw the page. By 1984, he's the most important documents dealer in the American West. Collectors call him, museums call him, church leaders call him. He always seems to find things. That's the tell nobody acted on. Genuine discoveries are rare, random, and mostly disappointing. Hofmann had them monthly, and each one landed precisely where the market was hungriest. Which brings us to the letter that made his name, and eventually helped end him. 1984. A letter supposedly written in 1830 by Martin Harris, who funded the first Book of Mormon. Harris is perfect prey. He mattered enormously, and almost none of his handwriting survives. In the letter, the angel at the center of the founding story isn't an angel. It's a white salamander, in a scene that reads more like folk magic than scripture. The salamander letter didn't add a footnote. It reframed how a religion began. A Salt Lake businessman, Stephen Christensen, bought it and paid to have it properly tested. Remember his name. He's the reason this story stops being about paper. The letter passed. The church made it public. Historians argued about it for 2 years. Nobody argued about whether it was real. Real was the one point everyone agreed on. Here's why, and it's the part that should make you uncomfortable about expert opinion generally. Authentication was split into narrow lanes. The paper person cleared the paper. The ink person cleared the ink. The handwriting person cleared the hand. Each answered correctly. Nobody owned the obvious question, why does all of this keep arriving through one man? If that just changed how you read the phrase, experts verified it, that's what this channel does. Stick around. Because the flaw was already sitting on every page, from the very first document he sold. It only needed someone to look at his work as a body, not one piece at a time. That takes 4 more years, and 2 people don't survive the wait. By 1985, Hofmann's finances have a hole in them that no single forgery can fill. Forgery pays once. Then the money's spent, and the next one has to be bigger. His biggest gamble was a printed sheet from 1639, the first document ever printed in the colonies. No copy was known to exist. He made one, and asked over $1 million for it. The Library of Congress studied it for months, and never wrote the check. Meanwhile, he promised the same collection of early church papers to several different buyers. He called it the McClellan collection. He had taken money for it. It didn't exist. The delivery date kept moving, the way a favor someone owes you keeps sliding another week. Stephen Christensen was the man vouching for that deal, and by October, investors wanted answers. On the morning of October 15, 1985, 2 pipe bombs were left in Salt Lake City. Stephen Christensen was killed at his office. He was 31 years old. Kathy Sheets was killed outside her home the same morning. She was 50. She had nothing to do with any document. Her husband was Christensen's former business partner. Her death appears to have been staged misdirection, meant to look like a business feud. 2 people were murdered to buy a forger, a few more weeks. That's the entire reason. Everything after this only matters because of what was taken from those 2 families. The next afternoon, a 3rd device detonated in Hofmann's own car. He survived it. Investigators had a suspect almost immediately. What they lacked was motive. Genuine documents are nothing to kill over. So a double murder investigation quietly turned into a question about the chemistry of ink. Utah brought in a state document examiner named George Throckmorton, who started where everyone starts. He compared the suspect documents against known genuine ones. Everything matched, exactly as before. Then he changed the question. He laid the suspect documents beside each other instead. He worked with William Flynn, an Arizona examiner who'd spent years studying iron gall ink. Flynn had made the ink himself and had aged it artificially just to see what happened. So he knew what to look for under magnification, and almost nobody else in the country did. The ink on Hofmann's documents wasn't soaked into the fibers. It sat on top, and it was broken. A fine net of cracks through every stroke, like the crazing on an old teacup glaze. Genuine 1830s. Iron gall ink doesn't do that, it sinks in and stays where it landed. The alkali that faked a century of fading also made the ink skin over and split as it dried. The shortcut that saved him 150 years signed his name on every page. And here's the part that ends it. It wasn't on most of them, it was on all of them. Throckmorton and Flynn examined hundreds of documents from collections across the region. The cracking appeared on 21, and every one of those 21 had passed through Hofmann. A document with no Hofmann anywhere in its history never cracked, not one time. That's what turns an oddity into evidence. One anomaly is a curiosity, a pattern has an author. In January 1987, Hofmann pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder and to fraud. He's been in a Utah prison ever since, and the parole board has said he'll die there. His forgeries are still out there. Some pieces sitting in collections may never be identified. Here's the part you can actually use, and it has nothing to do with old paper. You rarely catch a good fake by asking whether it looks right. It was built to look right. You catch it by asking what making it would require, and what that process can't help leaving behind. Then you compare the suspicious things to each other, not just to the real thing. Hofmann beat every expert who examined one document. He couldn't beat 21 of them lying side by side. If you want cases explained by the evidence that actually broke them, subscribe. That's this whole channel. Next time, the painter who fooled a nation and the one shade of blue that exposed him. Stephen Christensen and Kathy Sheets deserve to be remembered. Like and subscribe so the next case isn't forgotten.